I'm Ryan Sung, everybody. I work at Honolulu Cookie Company, but this is also my family's business. I've been back for about 10 years now. So I moved away. I'll share my story. But to kind of start off, I just want to ask this one question. Are you guys familiar with Honolulu Cookie? Does anyone not know it here? Okay, perfect. Everyone knows it. I don't have to do too much explaining, but everything you'll probably learn is all the history that you don't know and all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Is it working?
Oh, no, it's working. Just sure we can put it to full screen. It's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I think
Sorry.
it's okay. No worries. So here's just a quick video. I'll probably fast forward through this.
My favorite.
It could eat up some time here.
Classic butter macadamia.
Does it?
It's just simple. You taste the all-around flavor of the butter.
I remember some of my friends when we were like every Honolulu cookie stores we see, we stop by and have some samples.
It was like chips, right? You can't just have one.
Some of the flavors have macadamia nuts in there or chocolate chips. So depending on the flavor, you get different things to enjoy.
The pineapple shaped cookies, it's just an awesome combination and people just really appreciate it. These are my friends in Hawaii.
You can hear when you bite the cookie, the nice crunch that it has.
Everything starts fresh every day.
Yeah, this is kind of the part I want to show, is a good visualization of kind of what our bakery looks like.
From scratch.
Everything is done by hand, whether that's pushing the rack into the oven or dipping the cookie into chocolate or pressing a fruit into the middle of the cookie by hand, packaging these cookies into gift boxes. Everything is done by hand at our factory here in Hawaii.
And our product is really the sum of all that. You know, that's the effort and the dedication to make it right.
It's like handling a baby, that we care so much about our product.
That is our breath. It's our life, is these little individually wrapped cookies that get shared with people all over.
Kid and Janet put so much effort in creating the recipes.
Keith did it over and over, and I know Ryan has a story where he had to eat them over and over.
When I was a little kid, it was much different, right? And then as the years went on, we grew with the number of employees and the number of retail stores, and our kind of HCC Ohana got a lot bigger.
Keith always knew that his cookie was the best. And he found out that other people started to gravitate to it because the products were just flying off the shelf from their first store award and then just blow up to what it is today, and then being able to go to Las Vegas and to our Maui stores, which are great, and also reaching other people through other avenues. Our vision is to share the spirit of aloha with world-class products and experiences.
Well, Keith founded this company because he was inspired by Hawaii and the
There's only another minute left. It's kind of long video.
Pineapple, the symbol of hospitality. And that's kind of what we continue to do even today, is just continue to share aloha in any way that we can, especially with our cookies.
It really adds that specialness to our products when people know that, you know, these aren't easy to make, and it takes a lot of time and care making this product special and perfect to what the customers are seeing.
It's amazing to be part of something special, to be able to distribute to the rest of the world.
We get responses back from all the way across the world telling us how they are feeling Hawaii when they have these cookies. That's the biggest compliment.
As we keep growing, the heart of it is still that it's about sharing aloha. It's about treating each other well. It's about trying to make people happy, just trying to make people smile.
We're just a bunch of cookies all together in one ohana. So cookie is our thing. it will always be our thing, cookies.
All right, that's my presentation. Thank you, everybody. I'm just joking. I got more. So let's see. How did we get from this? So I think this was a good representation to show you kind of what our factory looks like. I'm not sure if you caught the clips in there, but we do everything by hand. We dip the cookies. Like I said, we put the piece of fruit in the middle. We pack them in a box by hand. Even we don't bake the cookies in like small ovens, but we're still rolling racks around in our bakery. So how did we get here exactly? So where did this all start? So this is an old picture. I had my dad send this to me. So this is like 1945-ish. I wrote Korea. You can see the writings in Japanese. I'm not sure if you know kind of what happened between 1910 and 1945, but there was a Japanese occupation. And so this is actually my grandfather's textile company back in Korea. I bring this picture up because it shows there are characteristics, I guess, within our gene pool that, bred entrepreneurs. I personally am not an entrepreneur. My dad is definitely one. But this is around 1945, and he, during that time in the Japanese occupation, the Japanese government basically forced certain Koreans and factories and whatnot to make things for them. And so this particularly, he was making, like I said, it was textile, so like belts, shoes, pants, things like that. So this is a nice kind of entryway into how we eventually immigrated from Hawaii to, from Korea to Hawaii. So how I met your mother. So that, I'm sure my dad and my parents don't know I have this picture of them. I don't think he likes me to show many pictures of him when he was younger. So yeah, that's my dad up there graduating from UH. And that's my mom over there. And so my dad immigrated here in the 70s. I can't remember the exact date, but I know he was 17. And so he went to McKinley High School down the road. He didn't speak a lick of English. He had a lot of friends that also didn't speak English, but they also didn't speak Korean. So I'm not really sure how they communicated, but that's kind of the immigrant story back in the day. My mom immigrated here in college, so they met. Most of you probably won't know this, but they met at this place called Ted's Drive-In, which was kind of right up the road, and it was, I'd say it's like the original Yummies, which is like a Korean barbecue plate lunch place. My uncle owned that spot, and he basically hired everybody in our family to work there. My mom specifically started working there, and my grandmother basically really liked my mom, and so she introduced her to my dad. And so that's where we come along here. So this is the next picture. That's me as a baby, that's my sister, and my parents when they're super young. So he went to UH, but he was a ceramics major. He told me this a couple days ago. He said, if you want a job out of college, don't be a ceramics major. And so, he didn't have a job out of college, which is why he had to start his own company. I think part of it also had to do was he was kind of an immigrant. He's, maybe during that time, I don't think he was going to be, he's not as qualified as the next person that speaks perfect English. So he made it work. He started his own company. And what did he do? He started a ceramics business. And you can kind of see, these are actually hanging in his office still. These are some of the more popular items. So he created these kind of molds, and then he created these cups. They call that a whale tail cup back in the day, and those are basically a whale wind chime. So he used his skills, what he knew how to do, and he started his own business, his first business. Obviously, it was a struggle, but he made it work. It pivoted eventually into wood products. So that tray over there on the left is actually, I was at my wife's parents' house, and I randomly pulled up this tray, and I was like, oh my God, this is a tray from like back in the day when I was a kid, and this is when my parents were making this product. So I flipped the tray over just to make sure, and it says K&S Hawaiian Creations on the back. And so it really was our tray, which is super random because she didn't even live in Hawaii. She just bought it as a gift when they were visiting Hawaii. And so that's, the picture next to it shows the factory, one of the original factories that they were in, which was in Kalihi, 1717 Home Rule Street. And so there's a lot of wood products there. You can sort of see what they're making. So my dad's claim to fame in this business was this product right here, which is a small coaster. He called it like a coaster clock. It's similar to all the other wood products. There's like a picture embedded in there, and then there of some Hawaiiana type of image, and then resin poured over it, and it's cured. And so he eventually turned that into other products. So he made clocks, and so he had little motors in the back. He'd drill holes in it, and yeah, it was a little coaster clock is what he called it, and it stood up on a little stand, and it sold really well in Waikiki. Really well is very relative to compare to what Honolulu Cookie is now, but when he's in his 20s when he started his business, there's no failing, so you kind of have to make it work. And he's always been that creative, and I think because he was a ceramics major, focused in like that kind of art world, he's always been more focused on the design side of products. He's not as much operational, even though he had to kind of be, but his bread and butter, what he likes to do is create products. And ultimately create experiences, which is where the retail stores popped out from. So what did he do next? He was able to see with his vision what was happening in Hawaii. All those products were sold at like ABC stores, Navy Exchange, the different places that tourists kind of transient traffic goes through. And so he had built a network selling to those buyers within Waikiki and wherever else he had to sell souvenirs at. So he saw what was doing well during that time, and food gift products were, in Japan they call it omiyage. That's basically what we sell is omiyage. But also locals buy it too, but they tend to buy it during holidays, gift giving season, but food gift products, that omiyage is basically food gift products. It's gotta be a food. And so that image over there with that box, as you can tell, it's hand drawn. He figured out what the logo is going to look like. He figured out, what the box is going to show inside of it. And so that's kind of a cool first prototype product that he created. And then in the next image over here, that's actually the sales sheet that came out of that. So he tells me a story all the time, and he tells everybody this story about how he got a loan for this. We had to buy equipment, right? So these big rack ovens are not cheap. The extruders are not cheap. And so figuring out going from wood products to cookies is entirely different. We had to build a bakery. He had to build a bakery with his employees. And so, he's not a baker, but he is a businessman. He's an entrepreneur. So he figured it out. He did hire a pastry chef and whatnot. He came in with original recipes. We tweaked it, and then we got basically the 4 first flavors, which is original macadamia nut, which is actually called butter macadamia nut nowadays, chocolate macadamia nut, pineapple macadamia nut, and Kona coffee. So pineapple and Kona coffee both have a piece of something in the middle, an inclusion. So one's a fruit of pineapple, and the other's like an actual Kona coffee bean. We don't sell the Kona coffee one anymore in that form. It's really hard to press the bean into a cookie every day. So, it went from essentially that product, so it was 4, and he was wholesaling it to all the same retailers that he used to work with, NEX, DFS, duty-free stores, ABC stores. And so eventually, actually that's not the right slide to go to, but eventually he realized that when you sell to other people, retailers, you don't have control where your merchandise, right? They're gonna buy your products and they're gonna put you wherever. You could be on the bottom shelf and no one's ever gonna see you. So I think he got more or less tired of not having any control over his business, which eventually I'll talk about, and that's why we have so many retail stores, because he got to the point where he realized that he had no control, and now if he had his own store, 100% of the merchandise can be his merchandise products. And so that's eventually what he pivoted into. But, part of this origin story is trade dressing. So trade dressing is kind of like a trademark, but, for us, it's essentially a patent on our shape and baked goods. And so I'm not sure where he came up with this, because he's really not one of his attorneys told him, he introduced this idea because eventually he settled on the pineapple shape, right? That's very important to our brand. Everything in our brand is pineapple shaped, if you've kind of recognized. I'm not sure if anyone realized it, but everything we do is pineapple shape. And there's certain colors that we use often just kind of for that brand recognition. And so pineapple shape was very important. So our patent attorney basically trade dressed our pineapple shaped cookie so nobody can copy it. We've had over time people that have done it say like, but it makes sense, like Dole Plantation created a pineapple shaped cookie, duh, that makes sense, right? But technically they can't. So we politely, serve them like kind of a note saying, hey, you're not supposed to do this, we have a patent on it and whatnot. But this is vital because this creates intellectual property, right, for yourself. This is what people recognize us for. So 2001 was their first store. Their first store was not a real quote-unquote store. It was our factory store. And so once they built the factory, a little bit before this, during that kind of wholesale period to the first store period from 1998 to 2001, we were attending like, these are probably my earliest memories of the company. We were attending like Made in Hawaii festivals before it was like gigantic like this and, going crazy. I was in the back cutting samples because we still sample at the store. But before we used to like just take a cookie, cut open the wrapper, and literally cut them. So me and my sister's job at every kind of one of these Made in Hawaii shows or whatever shows we'd have to go to where we'd sample is cut cookies. Or if I was at a retail store, people were in the back literally just cutting cookies with a knife, like a little chef's knife. It's not the most efficient. We figured out another process later, but that was the time in between. So 2001 was the first store, and that was the factory location. That's where it basically started its retail journey. 2002 was the first quote-unquote real store, and I write that because it's a lease that's not, we're not the landlords of our own store. This is a different landlord. This is actually General Growth Properties, which GGP is, what people know it in the world, and humongous landlord. They own tons of shopping centers. They used to own Ala Moana before Brookfield basically took it over. And so, they're a behemoth, and now Howard Hughes owns it. But this is Ward Warehouse. Ward Warehouse got torn down, and now there's like, I think Wai'ea's on top of it and like a bunch of other buildings basically, but it no longer exists. And so eventually we closed the store down because all the development, but you could see the first iterations of what our store concept was. It's not too far off from what we have now, but definitely the logo is super different. The kind of storefront facade with those little pineapples is spray painted on at night when he's working on the store himself. And so it's a little bit, it's basically provided the framework for how we do our stores today, but it's a little more elevated and premium now. So you can kind of see this is a lot of our original products, which we, signature boxes and whatnot. And so, like I said, we have a very similar footprint in terms of experience where you go to the right of the store, it's all these glass shelves. We still use glass shelves, we have nicer wood and all that. In the back, there's like a station where you make your own box. We still have that too, but just elevated. We still have a center table. On the other side are like merchandise, bookshelf type of units. And then right behind this, kind of if you're standing by that water jug, there's a sampling station there. And so that's, more or less where you sample still. This is our Hilton Hawaiian Village store. This is our Front Street store that eventually moved. It's no longer there, obviously, because of all the Lahaina fires. And so finally, it jumps into me. So this was, I know, like an eLive series, and it's talks about entrepreneurs. And I think the prompt was like, I explain how I got here and the life. So I had to tie in some slides about myself, not just the history. But I thought this was a cool way to show it. That last slide was basically 2006, and this slide is, where I jump off from that point. So 2006 was when I graduated high school. That's my graduation picture from Kaiser. I lived in Hawaiʻi at the time. And then I went to Orange Coast College, which is in Costa Mesa, and then I transferred to USC. So I spent 5 years in college. You know, I just enjoy this time because once you work, you'll never stop working after this. Depending on what you do, obviously. If you really love your job, then it's different. But once you get out of college, it's definitely the real world. So while I was away, this is a good timeline of what happened at the stores, at least. There's a bunch of bullet points, but essentially to kind of group it all together, we expanded pretty rapidly. We were on Oahu first. We went to Maui. We actually had a store in Seoul, Korea for a little while. Guam opened up, Las Vegas, partnerships with Tommy Bahama, Disney, Bloomingdale's. So the entire time I was away, I came back in 2016. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And so I think the note I wrote here is, you know, I graduated in 2011, and then I came back in 2016. So I worked at a couple advertising agencies, and then my last job was at Pandora, the music app that I'm not sure if anyone even uses Pandora anymore. But I was working in their ad sales department. So I was mostly in like advertising in Los Angeles. I didn't have plans to actually move back to Hawaii in 2016. I was 27 when I moved back. I had plans to move back to Hawaii probably when I was closer to 35. And in my head, my goal was to continue down this path. I had a brother-in-law that worked in this industry. He worked in kind of the ad sales industry. It's basically ad tech, right? The big platforms that are supported by advertisements. The Hulus, the Amazons of the world, the Facebooks, all those guys, Googles. That's kind of what I was getting into. And I saw a career path there, and I didn't really want to move back also because Los Angeles is a great place to be when you're young. There's so much to do. But then I got the call, and so I had to make the decision, which was not the easiest decision, to be honest, to move back to Hawaii because I did love LA that much. I built my young adult life there. You know, it's, you know, you move away from your home and you just, you know, I moved out at 18 and I never came back until 27. So I built my young adult life there, and then, you know, I had the decision to make, and the president of the company at the time was just saying, oh yeah, this would be a good time for Ryan to enter. In hindsight, I probably would have stayed even longer, but, you know, it's also great because I built an amazing network, and everything I know now wouldn't have happened as early and accelerated. And if I didn't move back, there's a point here that probably, I'm not sure if the company, I don't want to say I saved the company, but I'm not sure if it would be in the same position as it is now if I didn't come back at this time. So 2016, moving home after a decade. Mentally, I wasn't totally there, only because, like I said, I didn't want to move back. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome. At this point, there was like over 300 employees that worked for us, and there was 16 locations. So, you know, coming back as like this young kid and entering the workforce that my parents built, you can already kind of see like thoughts that were going through my head. Silver spoon, you know, like, you know, didn't deserve it, imposter syndrome, all these things that happened. So, you know, there's kind of mental challenges there, because then my old life, which was working in advertising, I had friends that were coworkers that were all my age that do the same thing. We meet up on the weekends, grab a drink, grab dinner, go to the concert, whatever, do whatever in LA. But coming back here, I can't really make friends with anybody at work, right? Because they're all essentially my parents' employees. And so it's a little bit of a different dynamic once I entered. So what I did was essentially, I poured a lot of my energy into networking. So when I came back, I spent a lot of time networking. I'm not sure if you know either of these guys besides me. That's Kurt Caldwell. He was a mayor. This just shows exactly the first networking event I went to actually in 2016. That was like a month after I moved back. I got invited out. I was kind of going to networking stuff here and there, different conferences, but this was more or less something I made it a point to meet as many people as possible. So 2016 to 2020, there's an autopilot button there because that's essentially what the company was doing at the time. During that time period, I was learning networking. I was training. I worked at the stores for 3 months. just as a sales associate, just literally selling cookies every day. I had the same shift as everybody else. It was kind of fun. I was like doing undercover boss style for a little while until obviously, people know that I'm the founder's son of just training up at the company. And so, a lot of that time in the beginning was to learn the business from the ground up. Eventually, the goal was to manage more people, but you have to learn it from the beginning, right? I really do actually love the sales side of things, working on the retail floor. Working retail is very hard. You got to stand on your feet the entire day. The first couple of weeks, I was like, oh my God, my knees are so sore, my feet are sore, and then eventually you kind of get used to it after the first couple of weeks. But more or less, I write autopilot because the company just kept growing year over year, double digits. So there was nothing to really worry about at that time. But as a result, I spent a lot of time either learning the business, networking. I had this project. One of my big projects during that time, out of multiple projects, was to figure out how to make processes more efficient. So anytime I went into a department, specifically our bakery, it takes a lot of hands to basically make these cookies and a lot of time. So I was trying to find ways to more or less automate processes that we could. We'll never be able to automate all of our processes because we have so many flavors and different, dipping and putting things in by hand, packaging it. But there's ways to semi-automate our processes to help make it a little more consistent and efficient. So I spent a ton of time basically figuring out if we were to take our bakery and packing lines and fully automate it, what was that look like? It just set me down the rabbit hole of learning about bakery equipment and what's out there. And so I spent a lot of time going to trade shows, equipment, conventions, and whatnot, all before 2020. And so it was good though. During that 4 years, I learned a ton. It was cruise control in a sense of the business was going well, but it wasn't cruise control in the sense that I constantly poured into learning the business. I was a very active participant, and I always tried to improve it. And I kind of got more and more confidence during that time. During that time, I also became general manager of the company. At a certain point, I was working in every department. I've worked every department, and they're like, okay, where do we put you now? It was a very informal training process. There's no playbook for this, because I'm the first generation to do it after my parents, I guess. I'm second generation, right? There's no playbook. If this business is still around, third generation, which I hope it is, I'll have a better framework for sure. It's not just figure it out. Here, Ryan, we're gonna put you wherever and you figure it out. This next time around for my kids or my sister's kids, whoever wants to work in it, they'll have a much better framework because that's kind of the groundwork I'm setting for them. And so March 2020 hit, COVID, not good. Not good for our business, not good for anyone's business. Especially for anyone related to tourism, right? Hawaii shut down for super long, what it felt super long. If you didn't have cash reserves in your business, you basically were probably out within a couple months before the PPP kicked in. I think PPP took a little while to basically be a government program to pull from. And then on top of that, just the application process was crazy and whatnot, and there's limited funds. And so that's a whole different story. But basically, COVID hit, and we shut down the Thursday before the governor shut down, I think on a Sunday. And then that's when he shut down Hawaii. We already saw the writing on the wall. Some of the decisions we had to make were okay. I think everyone had the similar thought process at this time. You could either be a business that shuts down before everything is mandated, or you can shut down when the government mandates you to. Our values as a company, and this is how we've always run, is just take care of our people, right? So we don't want to get anyone to get sick, and there's huge risks behind that, obviously, but also at the same time, that's just that's basically our HCC Honolulu Cookie kind of family. These are people that we've worked with forever. So we made the call to shut down early. I could see how much it pained my dad specifically, because he's very much gung-ho, old generation. He's like, yeah, we'll just wait till, more or less the government tells us to shut down. But, he eventually understood what we were trying to do. So, he was on board with it. We shut down the company. But then now, what does everyone do? So this is kind of where my part comes in, and where I had to go put my big boy pants on and use everything I learned. from the past 4 years. And so the company basically went dark overnight. We didn't do anything. We were just kind of waiting to hear back. So during that time, when the governor finally shut down Hawaii, we had to come up with some plan. So a lot of the beginning stages were communicating with the employees, figuring out what the plan was for them, making sure we keep up with government mandates, like the sanitization process, just like HR policies, like unemployment things, figuring out furloughs and layoffs. It was a mess. It was very, very challenging during this time. This is how I really felt. I felt like my hair was on fire, and I felt like, this helpless baby here in this picture. I actually wanted to use this picture as a representation of how it is to work with your dad sometimes, but I couldn't find a way to put that into this presentation. So it fits here too. But yeah, this is more or less how I felt during that time. But, you get your shit together, and then you just kind of figure it out. And so we worked with everyone that worked during this time. We tried to, just to give you context on what we did, kind of the first levers we pulled when COVID hit were we got to manage our cash. If we run out of cash, we don't have a business, and nobody has anything to come back to anyways. So layoffs and furloughs are obviously a big piece of it. We laid off a good chunk of the company, and then we furloughed the majority. So maybe 2/3 of the employees we still furloughed. We furloughed a lot more employees than we laid off, only because as a furloughed employee, you can still have health benefits. So we were paying for their medical and insurance. And so that's why we chose to furlough instead of lay everybody off and get everything off the books. It was more of a decision of, everybody's gonna need this during this time. And so we should furlough the majority of the company versus lay them off. And so that was kind of one of the first levers we pulled. We had everybody stay home. We paid them out for months, actually. We paid them out for 8 weeks that first time, and then we furloughed everybody. And then all we had to pay was medical. And so that helped stretch our cash out. We had, because I said we were on cruise control for that beginning time, we built up a healthy amount of cash in our business, but all those reserves were burning. I think we were burning $2 million a month. It was crazy. It was not good. We saw where it would end. We could forecast this year we're done. If we don't reach this point and make money and everything comes back online, we are screwed. And so I had to look back at pictures on my phone for these pictures, because I was like, oh man, in April 2020, I was already thinking of what to do. And so we had a couple $1 million worth of inventory. At that time, we were doing we had 20 locations, and imagine how much inventory you have to build up for 20 locations. We have a whole warehouse of product. We were keeping about 10 days worth of inventory on hand. An average store does a lot. And so we had a ton of product just sitting in our warehouse that's not gonna sell. And so we did a number of things. I reached out to basically contacts that I had through the networking. So networking is super key, networking to find. So I found the buyers at Foodland through my network. I found the buyers at Costco, more or less through the network too. And so we had to sell inventory that we had at the company that was basically just only essentially 1 month off of their shelf life, and sell it at a discount just to offload as much as we could. What we did also on top of that is obviously we donated it to a ton of first responders. Cookies are gonna go bad anyway, so you might as well give it to everybody that's working crazy hard at the hospitals and whatnot. And so, these first pictures here on the side, you could see those are actually sold at Costco for a really short amount of time. I think our fear was if we sold gift products at Costco, people would just basically, they'd be like, oh, Honolulu Cookie is so cheap here and whatnot. It's not a cheap product to make. We're just doing it because we had to figure out a way to get this inventory off of our hands. Foodland had it for a little while. And then, this is also April 2020, that prototype bag right there. So the eventual goal for Costco was to figure out how to make a product that's more Costco-esque. That's what you see at Costco right now. That's a 16-ounce bag of mini bites. we've always had mini bites, like that miniature chocolate chip cookie or just miniature cookie in general, versus the big ones that's like dipped. So we created that first prototype, and that was eventually what I presented to the Costco buyer. Say, this is what I'm gonna rotate you into. We can't sell our gift products to you forever. We can only sell it to you for however long we can. And then we wanna make sure we keep our brand safe. And so it eventually turned into that mini bite bag. That's September of 2020. And so Costco took it in Hawaii specifically, the 7 Costcos there. And then we were able to get the Los Angeles Costco buyer contact, because Hawaii region Costcos are actually linked to Los Angeles region. That's who actually manages them. But Hawaii has their own buyers. And so the LA regional buyer for cookies or snacks, they wanted to buy product too. So they committed to, what was it? It was a 120 pallet order. And so that's one pallet right there. There's 432 units on a pallet. And I was like, oh no, how do I make 120 and get all the Costco audits in time? And so, what we had to do, this was all in the mainland Costco's, right? And so what we had to do was find partners in the mainland to actually help us make cookies that had audits, that worked with Costco. Costco is a beast to work with. There's a ton of audits that you have to have. We are audited in a certain way here. We have our Costco audit now, but the way to survive this time period from basically November is when that product went into the LA Costco's, to figure out between September and November how to get a Costco audit is impossible. So what I did was I tasked our QA team to figure out the Costco audit. In the meantime, I was flying back and forth to LA to find partners to see who can bake it for us too over there, and who had Costco audits. That was my hedge. That was how I figured out, okay, if we can't make our audit timeline, we're dead, because by the end of the year we run out of money anyways. And so the hedge worked. I figured out how to make the product at a co-packing site. And so essentially, I'm not sure if you understand how most products are made in the US, like everyone has a co-packer. Like everything you get on the shelf essentially is more or less made by a co-packer, because not everybody can supply, like huge brands, they have co-packers. For us, we found very specific partners that can make our cookie. At the end of the day, the cookie is a cookie, right? It's made out of butter, flour, sugar, eggs, whatnot. And so that's what we did. Our company name is Honolulu Cookie Company. Obviously, it's kind of location-based, but that's our brand name. It's a little different, and it's very obvious where it's made on the back of the product. But this was a way to basically survive COVID. It wasn't easy. That's my niece right there. But we got a 120 pallet order from Costco LA, and then we got like another 120 pallet order from Bay Area, reached out to us, San Diego, Northwest. So we had like 500 pallets of orders basically within the span of November to January. That saved our business right there, right off the bat. Without that, we would be gone. It also projected us into this, rabbit hole of working down different diversification strategies. So Costco's a big one. Eventually, I kind of realized during COVID, because travel was so limited, like tourism didn't come back for a while in Hawaii. I think it was like the end of 2021 where it's like, okay. 2022 got even better. And so every year it's climbed up, and finally kind of got back a couple of years ago. But I realized getting our product to the customer was very important versus expecting them to come to Hawaii. More or less, that strategy still holds true, because I think there's a lot of things that are happening in the world where it's a little harder to come to Hawaii, whether it's like just geopolitical landscape or basically general currency exchange rates that Japanese, it's super expensive for people with weaker currencies to come to Hawaii now. It's expensive for anybody to come to Hawaii, but it's even especially more expensive for them. So our Japan strategy, this kind of shows more or less what we do now in Japan. We do a lot of pop-ups. I think we held like 28 pop-ups last year, 30 pop-ups, something like that. But Daimaru, if you know that, that's a big department store in Japan. You'll see them all over the place. We're in Hankyu, but they only last for about a week, 7 days to 14 days at a time. And that's on purpose because we don't want a permanent store there. We don't want to make it too accessible. And then eventually just our brand is so powerful in Japan specifically. We have all these one-off kind of opportunities that happen. This middle image here is called Mook, which is magazine book in Japan. It's called a Mook book. And so this Mook book is really interesting. They have like a magazine and it comes with merchandise. And so they asked us if we wanted to participate in it and use our brand. It's kind of marketing. They make these super cool products. That's a makeup bag. I actually use that as like my travel toiletry bag every time I go somewhere. That's like a pencil case. That's a Hello Kitty with like a cookie in it. So really cool opportunities. And then here's a video. This is the Hankyu Hawaiʻi Fair. This is a good representation of kind of how our brand is perceived in Japan. So I just took the picture. I took this video just kind of over everyone's head, but it shows like it goes all the way back. That's like the line over there, and the entrance to the store is over there, and it wraps around. It wrapped around. It snaked around several times. So there's like 200 customers right at opening that show up and just wait in line for the cookies. And so in Japan, that's a very interesting strategy because we've built 20 plus years of kind of this Japan loyalty, this international customer. And it's, like I said, it's very hard for them to come to Hawaii now. The Japanese that come here, I think it's like 40% down still from 2019 times. The Japanese that come here more or less are very kind of wealthier Japanese that come here. So yeah, that's, oh no, there, whoop. What's going on? Okay, and then more of our diversification is, what we did was we created, skipping over a slide, we created this product here. So out of the 16-ounce Costco bags, we shrunk it down and made a 4-ounce product. And so myself and our SVP, Kathy, we more or less like figured out how to work in this retail model. I say retail as in like the grocery stores and specialty retailers and independent retailers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like World Market or even like say Ralph's or Kroger's or Central Market in Texas or the next slide shows all the partners. But basically we created a smaller version, and the reason I did this is because I was like, I don't want another issue of all our eggs in one basket. All our eggs were in one basket with retail stores, and then I diversified to Costco. And then all our eggs are in one basket with Costco. And then now I'm just like, okay, we have to expand the different market set where it's not just one customer that has such huge volume for us. And so we've been building this specific product out for several years now too. We eventually got to the point, that's our sales director. I hired a dedicated person to this side of the business now. He understands how buyers work. You got to put this through a distribution channel, work with distributors like, say, over here it's like HFA or Waihata or, like all these, like, there's so many distribution companies. In the mainland, it's Keihi and Unify, and there's a bunch of other retail distributors. But you more or less have to work with them because none of these retailers are going to buy direct from you. And so we figured this piece out. It took a lot of work, but I could only take it so far because then at a certain point I was just spread all over the place, and I couldn't even do my normal day-to-day job, which is many other hats that I wear. It was good learning from it, and I still go to trade shows. I just spent like 2 weeks in the mainland just going to 3 different things, a Costco Roadshow and 2 distributor shows all back to back. And so, it's been teaching us that, diversification is very much key. So these are some of the partners that we work with in the mainland. This is a very small set compared to what we actually work with now. I think we're in like over 4,000 locations in the mainland now, just with that small 4-ounce bag. So once again, the strategy for mini bites, that smaller bite-sized cookie, is mass market products. Everything in Hawaii is going to stay more or less gift products. So you won't see this at Foodland. You won't see this at Safeway, that 4-ounce bag, on purpose, because I'm not trying to impact our stores here. I'm trying to create a differentiation of a product within the same set of the brand that we have. So Honolulu Cookie brand will hopefully be seen as like, gift products. And what I've seen at these trade shows over time are people will come up to us and be like, oh, I found you at World Market. I found you at Costco. And I was like, did you even know we had retail stores in Hawaii? And they're like, what are you talking about, And so I explain it to them, and I'm like, our business was founded in this concept, these retail stores. We have gift products, we have bigger cookies. And so it's kind of become full circle now.
Or like Sam's Club or stores like that more on a regular basis than Honolulu Cookie Company. So in that case, aren't you like blocking opportunity where these people who are living on island can go and buy to increase the sales in there? And also, I had another question in regarding to that, like people who live here and have their family living out of island, they usually buy stuffs from stores like that where they go regularly. So I just had a question, this question.
Yeah, no problem. So, like I said, it's very intentional that we do this, and part of the being intentional is I know we're probably decreasing our sales potential. But because our bread and butter is this retail store experience, that's ultimately what we want to drive people to. And say on the mainland, it's okay to sell like that mini bite product because it's like we can't get the touch points that we are trying to get here. Costco has it, but they're the only retailer. Actually, that's not true. Costco has it, Commissary and NEX has it, but that's a very specific customer base. It's military. You have to have like a military or government ID to go there. So it's not to the masses either, right? So kind of along the lines of the Japan strategy, where once again we only do pop-ups. I'm trying to make it more or less not as accessible on purpose. And if that means lowered sales, I think it's okay for me because it means longevity of company. And that's really what I'm trying to get at, is like keeping the company in a healthy place for as long as possible without damaging the brand. And I guess when I say damaging the brand, sometimes I think of mini bites and like the way people perceive them as like just a snack item. But we have more layers than we're just like a snack item. But that is part of our strategy. We want to create something that's accessible and you can just pick off the shelf or pull off your pantry and just like snack on all day. And so there's different like buckets of our strategy, but it just does get confusing because it's under the Honolulu Cookie brand as a whole. But as I've worked it in, I've seen it be parsed out in those ways. Like I said, how some people only know us from the mini bite side versus knowing us from our retail store. I see it happening, and if we do it in Hawaii, and all the retailers in Hawaii keep asking, like the Longs and the Safeways and the Food Lands, they want to carry our product. Target reached out to us a little while ago, like, cannot, like that would already probably be a couple 100,000 to million plus sale right there, but I cannot do it. So I fend them off on purpose because I don't want to dilute what's happening in Hawaii. I have cookies for everyone, by the way, after this, so don't leave.
Thank you once again for everything. My question is kind of related to when you mentioned like your dad had things that he was like really enthusiastic about, like the design and creative part. You mentioned that you had more experience in like tech marketing and things like that. So in like a larger company like this, how do you kind of find your niche even though you take on this like really high role?
Yeah. So yeah, my dad is, like you said, design, art, creating experiences, retail, that kind of stuff. He's really good at that. I can't do that. Like he's literally, like when he draws out, like when we build a new store, he has 1x1 grid paper and he's drawing where the fixtures go. If it's 4 foot wide fixture, he has 4 squares and he's like drawing it in by 2 feet. He's literally floor planning the entire store. So, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd probably hire like a draftsman or an architect or some sort. But I guess for my kind of niche, it's not advertising. I don't use anything that I learned from advertising anymore beyond like maybe the networking side of stuff. My position, quote unquote, is like executive vice president. So if you were to look at that, it's kind of in the hierarchy of order. It's like my parents are above me. I'm executive vice president, and we have more or less an operator under me that's also managing another whole set of team below her. But my niche is, I think I'm very resourceful. I'm very adaptable. As like during COVID time, that was where my resourcefulness kind of shined through. Managing products and just or managing projects and just learning what I can. I've always been savvy at learning something fairly quickly and applying what I know to what I'm doing. And so, one example is we built so like I never did that before, but I don't think I can task that to another person. I can't task certain things to other people that have a lot of like risk profile versus like me doing it. Because if I make a mistake, you know, it's our company and it's like, it's on me, but if somebody else makes a huge mistake, that's not gonna be great for them, you know? And so I more or less take those projects on, the ones that are just kind of like complicated and convoluted and very blurry, where it requires decisions on the fly, instead of tasking somebody else, because they're gonna have to come back to me anyways, or like the management team, be like, hey, can I do this? But it's so much faster when I do it, in terms of like, because I don't have to wait for a decision. I just like say, oh yeah, this is what I think. Like I'm just gonna go down this path already, and just go, you know, that's where I think eventually, it's kind of the entrepreneurial side, is just being resourceful as much as you can.
Hello. I know you had mentioned the imposter syndrome when you were transitioning into your family's company. Do you remember any of the pushback that you had first received when you were assuming leadership positions, and how you ended up gaining the trust of the team?
Yeah. It's interesting because I came back at 27 and like people just saw me as like a young guy. You know, I'm 37 now. I like to say I don't look that old just because I'm Asian and like, you know, I don't look super old. So like I feel like people think I'm much younger than I actually am. But during that time, I say that because like at least the areas I worked in, I didn't really have to manage people that were older than me. I think eventually that happened, but then I was like, okay, that's where I was like, yeah, that's weird. I'm like trying to manage this person that's like, you know, in their 40s or 50s or 60s, and like, what do I know? And so eventually, I kind of just owned it, and I was like, I don't know more than you. Like, you know way more than I do, you know? I'm just here to learn from you at the end of the day. And so I think that, on top of our company culture, just in general, like how people take care of each other there. And to be truthful, the company culture was maybe not as great before when I first entered, because there were a bunch of things that were, you know, discovered over that time. But we more or less morphed it and cleaned house, and you know, eventually got to the point where we are now. But the core culture kind of was there too. It was always that family business mentality, taking care of others. It wasn't to the extent it is now. But I didn't receive too much pushback from anybody that I guess were like at the management or executive level. Here and there were hints of it, but eventually they weeded themselves out. And that's why I say there was a lot of like kind of movement at the company, because once, you know, I got into this general manager position, once COVID happened, once like this key person who's, like I said, right below me, her name's Kathy, she is very integral in our company, right? She is very much spiritual, she's Christian, and that, not to say that that is why she's like that, but she comes from a very good set of core values at least, where she's always like taking care of others, putting others before herself, and all of these great things that she is my mentor, right? So I learned a lot from her. And so having her in like the helm, essentially, like steering the ship, it's super important, because like everyone looks up to the leadership, right? And if there's like something off or toxic about it, it's gonna bleed out into the rest of the company. If your leaders are super strong with their values and you know like how they exemplify themselves and spend the time to listen to others, like it's gonna bleed out into the company that way. So more or less, you know, that's kind of that's eventually what happened. And so yeah, I think overall now the company is in a very good place, but you know, we do hold people accountable. We're very open and honest. We speak truth with kindness is like what I like to say. I don't want to beat around the bush. I think in Hawaii a lot of times, like culture here is like save face, beat around the bush, you know, like don't say anything direct. And then if you do say something direct, you know, it could be taken bad, but like saying the truth, no one's gonna, you know, eventually what we've trained our company to do, and we've put a lot of time into this training, is making people be okay with being vulnerable, with having difficult conversations of, you know, if you're not doing something, if you are doing something, staying curious and not being so defensive, pulling your armor down. So we do a lot of that in training to make sure that we're able to manage our team in a way where we can speak out about situations that are happening, and it's not going to be taken as like an attack. because that is the culture now. That's what we ultimately are trying to build.
Mic working? Alright, hi Brian. My name is Wilson. Thanks for sharing this story. I just have two questions. So, the first one was you mentioned you had to make that really big decision of moving back from LA back to here to be part of the company. And I mean, it sounds like you spent like 9 years building out your adult life in LA. That's a lot of time, and I'm just kind of curious at what went behind that decision, just because it's not an easy one to make. And then the other kind of question I'm kind of curious about is like, if at the top of your head, I'm curious what you feel were some of your biggest mistakes or failures throughout your professional career.
The first one was what made me ultimately decide to move back?
Yeah.
What it was? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a hard one. I think because of where the company was at, I knew this opportunity was something, it might be there, but it might not be there later too, right? It might have gotten to a point where it got so large and whoever's managing it at that time, like it would have just been too difficult to learn the business after that and come back to. And so that was part of it. Was I might have, this was another one. My mom also said during that time, she's like, just try it. If you don't like it, just move back, whatever, I don't care. You know, like she's never been one to like say you have to do this. And so that's basically what my mentality was like, I'll come back, I'll try it. And I knew in my head that I can't turn back. But I think I used that as like a defense mechanism of like, a rationalization, kind of like it's okay. Maybe I can move back eventually, but it wasn't a real option. And so yeah, that was kind of my driving force, was more or less, I knew the opportunity was there, but it might not always be there, so I should just take it. And whatever, the timing can't be perfect, but I'll figure it out. Biggest mistake, probably the first mistake I made was, during that time where I was like trying to figure out all the automation stuff, like, okay, I got basically suckered into buying this equipment that would like automate our dipping processes, and it's called an enrober. It like waterfalls chocolate on it, and you like have to feed it through this conveyor belt, and then half dips the cookie. And so I bought, like going through all this process and working with our manufacturing team, going to like all the equipment shows, and the salesperson that I worked with at this company, like sold us on this and how many chocolate tanks we need and everything. It was like $1 million investment. So purchased it, and we couldn't even install it. It literally just sat for 3 years because it was too big, it didn't fit in our current space, we couldn't modify it, we didn't have a transformer at our factory that was big enough, those big green boxes that supply power to your building. That thing requires a lot of power, that equipment, so essentially that was my big mistake at first. I've made many mistakes after that, but it wasn't as expensive. But luckily, like I said, like those are the random projects I take on, and sometimes that's how like the cookie crumbles essentially. Then I screw up massively, and I'm like, okay, my dad can't fire me, so you know, more or less, it's like, you know, all is forgiven eventually. But I've gotten much smarter since then in terms of like knowing how to make the decisions and not being so rational.
Do you still have that machine?
No, we sold it for like half off. So, you know, $500 or something like that is what we got rid of it for. So that person was very lucky.
Okay, I believe that's all the time that we have for questions. But if we can give Ryan one more round of applause. Really quickly, we just wanted to announce our giveaway for this eLive event. We do have this box of assorted cookies from Honolulu Cookie Company, just as a little thank you for everyone for attending. So, of everyone, we're just gonna pull a name right now. Angela, Joy.